The Tampa Five are a group of students that were somewhat wrongfully arrested at a diversity rally at South Florida University. They were protesting Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida's most recent conservative laws, whenever the police seemed to kind of go after them, and maybe unlawfully so. And after that, strangely enough, they were charged with several crimes. And after looking at all the facts, it seemed like a very suspicious case. I dug into the videos of the event that were actually hosted by the activist, and unlike most kind of situations like this, the videos don't necessarily make the activists look innocent. Like, you can see them here resisting arrest. But however, they were charged with several felonies that do not seem to fit the actions in these videos. Now, that being said, the activists could be hiding the truth from me, and of course trying to cover their own ass, in front of the police and whatnot. But I mean, in that video with this old man right here in the background, you can just tell that like something was going wrong. This old man, I can't remember exactly what's going on audio-wise here, but I cut out most of the screaming and kind of like traumatic stuff I could, while still giving you guys the main story. You can go to their Instagram right here if you want to learn a little bit more. I also got to speak with Laura Rodriguez, member of the Tampa Five, a teacher who lost her job due to this whole ordeal. And she was on a tour of the United States trying to meet people, rally support, and prove I innocence. Also got to speak with Laura Rodriguez, member of the Tampa Five, a teacher who lost her job due to this whole ordeal. And she was on a tour of the United States trying to meet people, rally support, and prove her innocence. And while she was in Dallas, Texas, I was given the opportunity to get to speak to her.
Yeah, so there was a lot of laws passed in the most recent legislation cycle, in addition to laws that were passed as retaliation for the George Floyd, or Justice for George Floyd movement. And so that meant that it was now legal for protesters to be hit in the streets. So we are relegated to sidewalks. We still continue to protest, but there's, that was there. Other legislation included the Don't Say Gay bills, which essentially require teachers to not only out their students, but to take LGBTQ history and anything having to do with that completely out of schools. Anti-trans legislation. The university system was asked by Ron DeSantis asked the university system to release all medical information of trans students, and they willingly gave it to them. My roommate included in one of that. So people who were not out are now out to Ron DeSantis because he has that list. And there was a whole host of education legislation, so book banning, so taking critical race theory. So those are, buzzwords, but that basically means they're taking out the conversation of race in history. So Rosa Parks was arrested just because she was sitting down, not because she was black, which is misleading and a whitewashed version of history, as well as not letting AP African American history be taught as it should be, which includes education on people who are self-described as revolutionaries, people like Angela Davis, who are incredibly and monumental to Black history, to American history, as well as Ron DeSantis. It wasn't legislation, but it's his belief and his words that he said that Black people benefited from slavery, which is abhorrent, evil, disgusting. And so, and also there's like anti-immigration stuff that he was doing, where he made it legal for people who are driving undocumented people to be charged with a felony. He was sending money over to Texas to help militarize the border, which led to the direct result of children dying. And yeah, just and also union busting bills that meant that unions could not exist within a year if they do not meet the 60% threshold. And Florida is also a right to work state. So you can get all the union benefits without being in a union. So why would you join this union who's supposedly fighting for your rights when you're quote unquote given to? And they also got rid of automatic payments for unions. So now folks who are teachers, AFSCME workers at universities have to paycheck by paycheck write and submit money separately, which is definitely going to hurt the 60% threshold that they have to meet.
So you have this long list of complaints against Abbott, but what actually brought you into that office of I think it was the president of your school, right? Mm-hmm. That day.
So that specific, for clarification's sake, we never made it to the office. So the reason that we were protesting that day on March 6th was to protest the anti-diversity bill, which would get rid of the diversity, equity, and inclusion offices in public university in Florida. And after 2020, this is important context, after 2020, the DEI office were integrated into all aspects of university life. So a lot of the money was then shifted and funneled through the DEI office to fund different departments, to fund student activity, multicultural groups, fraternities, and this and the other. And Ron DeSantis, with that legislation, Ron DeSantis cut all funding to DEI, which means the funding to those groups will no longer be. And it also affects professor tenure because now they have a post-tenure review, which means they could be fired even though they had already been through the process to have job security. And with what happened at the Florida International University, where he fired the entire board of trustees, replaced them with people who are former footballers, real estate investors, and bankers. Those people are now in charge of doing the post-tenure reviews. So that means that any of the professors who kind of don't immediately leave Florida, which there already is like an exodus, and specifically an exodus of Black professors, they could be fired in the future for not aligning with the agenda that Ron DeSantis and his cronies have put forward. And yeah, so we were there that day to protest that because we knew that's exactly what was going to happen, where everything that has been fought for historically would be completely wiped out in a matter of months. And so we were there that day outside of the student union, where a whole host of student organizations came together, gave speeches, and at the end of the rally, the students decided that they were going to march over to the president's office and demand a meeting with her, because that's what they had been doing for the entirety of the semester. They've been asking Ray Law to increase Black enrollment, to protect DEI, to denounce Ron DeSantis. And when we had entered the lobby of the building where her office is, we were met with violence. She works on the third floor, and we were only in the lobby for probably less than 5 minutes or so before we were attacked by police. And that was something that we had never experienced before as an SDS chapter. The police would only be 2 police, and they would watch from afar. We had never been in a situation, and we've occupied the student center before. We have disrupted the inauguration of the university president. And we were in a lobby, and we were met with 15 police officers, a police dog, and brutality.
Can you tell me how long it was since you entered the building that you had any kind of conflict with the police officers there? And is there any reason you found post this event to help explain why they were so aggressive?
So we were in the building. I don't have a good concept of time, but we were in the building probably like a minute or so before the police chief, who I didn't realize was the police chief at the time because he was just wearing like a polo, stepped forward and started yelling at a specific student. And within 40 seconds of him approaching a student, he grabbed her, and that's when, he like escalated the violence, and the other police like followed suit. And throughout this 5 minutes, you also see people who come to the lobby ask to, for whatever meeting they have, and be let in by the workers. So you have to have an ID to get on the elevator. And that was happening as we were like having as we were being attacked by the police. So like the workday is still going on.
Is there any reason you found later that this man in the polo, the chief of police, attacked that member? Or was there any bill that was signed, any reason they had?
He in particular has been in a legal battle of some sort, where he is being charged by a former employee of sexism, racism, and disability discrimination. I guess the word is racial, gender, and disability discrimination by a former Black employee of his who worked within the police department. And that was definitely something that SDS brought to light during the Increased Black Enrollment campaign, because we wanted to make the campus safer for Black students. And if the chief of police, who has access to a whole host of resources, to military grade weapons, is being like actively investigated and pursued for racial discrimination, we knew that was something that we needed the student body to know of, in hopes to get him out of there, because we knew that he would eventually cause a lot of problems. And I mean, we knew what was going to happen, and it did.
Do you have the chief of police name?
Chris Daniel.
So he knew that you guys were basically out for his job then?
Yeah, we created flyers that we would post around campus for students to know who Chris Daniel was.
Okay. So we were talking earlier that there were some videos that you guys have, a whole treasure trove of videos, and some of them include video evidence of cops pinning women to the ground and groping them.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been published in newspapers or on TV in Tampa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was something that was talked about at our press conferences that we had when we first had hearings. I believe it was published by a news source, Creative Loafing, in Tampa, and potentially the Tampa Bay Times. But yes, that is something that we have always talked about since that day we were arrested, and have tried to bring to light.
Has there been any progress toward charges against the officer or anything?
So we're not kind of pursuing that because we're more worried about like the charges we face, because when we were first arrested, we were charged with battery of a law enforcement officer, a misdemeanor for trespassing, and a misdemeanor for disrupting campus life. And the only person who was arrested inside was also charged with, excuse me. So I'm going to backtrack here. That day, the day that we were arrested, 4 people were arrested, and we were charged with felony of a battery of a law enforcement officer, a misdemeanor for resisting arrest without violence, and a misdemeanor for disrupting campus life. And then the only person who was arrested inside the building was also charged with a misdemeanor for trespassing. And that was a student who pays tuition at that university. And after we held press conferences speaking of the police brutality, reinforcing the demands that we originally had while we were out there and adding new ones such as fire Chris Daniels and Rhea Law step down. A month after, they put out a warrant for the 5th person, Lauren, because, she was a very outspoken person afterwards, because we were concerned with finding a lawyer. So we didn't want to say too much without having legal advice. And so they charged her with the exact same things we were charged with. And after about a month or so, when they formally charged us, they dropped the trespassing charge and they added additional felony counts to 3 of us.
Would you say this is classic trumped up charges tactics?
Absolutely, I would. This is...
Would you repeat that back to me and then explain?
Yeah. I believe, and the Tampa 5 believes, that these are trumped up charges that are put on protesters because we have, seen it happen, and we watched them deliberate for 3 hours while we were in the back of their police cars, what they could charge each person with, whether we did something or did not do it, and we all ended up with the same charges. I watched a cop copy and paste someone else's report onto mine, delete their name and add mine in.
So you guys aren't focused on offensive criminal charges at this time, is that correct?
Not at the moment.
Can you explain to me, and imagine you spoke to a lawyer about this, why you're not going after offensive criminal charges?
I guess that just wasn't something that we had in mind. We're just more focused at the moment on getting him fired because he is being defended and backed by the police and the USF. Yeah, we haven't really discussed why. So I'd be speaking for myself, and I don't think I should do that.
I understand. Thank you. So what's next for the Tampa 5? And please repeat the question back to me.
So, as in terms of what's next for us, currently we are on our national speaking tour. Because of the legislation that Ron DeSantis has been putting forward, and more specifically that it's being copied and pasted in other states such as Louisiana, Texas, Ohio, Kentucky, we know that this is a national problem, and we know that DeSantis has eyes for the presidency. Whether he makes it there or not, we know that his laws are reverberating throughout the U.S., and so we know that this is a problem that a lot of people are facing currently. So not only do we want to let them know what led up to this in Florida, we want to help people defend the programs that are under attack or that will be under attack, and as well as a way of growing the movement against police brutality, against student repression, because while this may affect us as individuals, we know that this is affecting the student movement. We know that our case will set a precedent for we know that this case will set a precedent for the student protesters who were arrested at the University of Florida with the exact same charges we were about a week after we were arrested. We know that this will set a precedent to the pro-Palestinian protester who was arrested less than 2 weeks ago at Florida Atlantic University with the same charges that we were. We know that they use these charges to scare people to get off the streets, but we know that it's being on the streets is what makes change. We know that it was 25 million people on the streets during the George Floyd rebellion that got Derek Chauvin convicted. That would not have happened if people were not on the street. His murder would have been swept under the rug like many other murders have, many other murders that have happened in Tampa, such as Jonas Joseph, who was killed by the police, and they changed his narrative multiple times. And because, unfortunately, there's a lot of other stuff going on at that time. There wasn't a mass movement, and it wasn't on tape, so it's the police words against a dead man. We know through historical lessons and actual factual history that what makes change is people demanding change, not because it's going to be handed to us, but because we fought for it.
Great. I think that concludes everything that was on my initial plan. Is there anything you would like to say to people at home?
Yeah, we definitely want the support of people and organizations across the country. We are so thankful to have resolutions passed by the Central Labor Council of North Florida and South Florida, in support of us, and the Chicago Teachers Union and the LA Teachers Union, and most recently the Starbucks United Workers Union. And if you're a part of a union, or if you're part of an organization, or you as an individual want to help out, we have petitions that that you can sign. We have templates that you can, as an organization, come together with a coalition of other organizations to send to our state attorney, who was handpicked by Ron DeSantis after he fired our actual elected state attorney, to tell them to drop the charges on the Tampa 5.
And can you tell me any plugs you have for social media, your groups or your personal?
Yeah, so follow at Justice for the Tampa 5 on Instagram. You can look at Justice for the Tampa 5 on Facebook, defendthetampa5.org. And big shout out to Tampa Bay SDS, Students for Democratic Society, and National Students for Democratic Society for being behind our back 100% of the way from the moment we were arrested till the moment we get our charges dropped.
You can fund our other community projects through the Sisyphus Media Syndicate for our international projects, as well as the Trinity River Lookout for our local DFW Texas projects. Thank you very much for all your donations, and other donation links are in the description.
What do you know? What do you see? You're on the lookout.